Afternoon, everybody. If you can see me, perhaps just raise your hand using the Zoom icons. Just want to make sure everybody's good. Lovely. Thank you. Just give it just maybe 30 more seconds for a couple of other people to join. That'll be great. And then we can get started. Right, it's 12:01, so let's get started. So, first of all, I just want to say welcome. Thank you for joining me and for taking your time this lunchtime here. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we start. And number one is I invite you to take some notes, just because we don't have any specific slides that we're going to share. So do take some notes. There will be a recording available should you need it. So we'll send a copy of the recording out to you later on this afternoon. Secondly, um, obviously because of the time factor, the session is going to run for about half an hour to 45 minutes maximum, depending on how many questions we have and how quickly we get through the presentation. Thirdly, what I would like to do is to, if you can leave your questions to the end, and then I'll answer those questions once we get to the end, and that will kind of help me with timings and also help you because if you have another meeting to go to straight after this as well. So we'll definitely ensure that we won't run beyond 12:45 today. So I want you to one of my promises to you all is to ensure that you all walk away with at least one, possibly two ideas that you can start using immediately. And it's and because the reason for most training sessions is, it's not about going on a training course and then learning the skills and then adopting those skills there. Today, I'm going to share with you some skills and ideas and tips that you can start using immediately. Okay. So as soon as the meeting's finished, you will have the opportunity to see with what I've shared with you today is going to be valuable to yourself. So that's number one. Secondly, and you don't have to share this with the group, but secondly, right now, I want you to think about a problem that you may have with a person, a team, anyone where you would like to improve that relationship with them, whether that be with your manager, whether that be with a peer, or whether that be with a team member, or whether that might be with another colleague within the organization. I want you to have a think about that and just make a note of it in your own environment. I'd like you now to just think about trust, and I want you to think about one person in your life, just one person in your life, whether they're at work or whether they're at home. I want you to think about who is the one person that you genuinely trust. Okay. Not not who is it that you like, but who's the one person that you would say, I generally trust this person. Okay. Now, and then I want you to just hold that thought, and then I want you to think about the reasons why you trust this person. Okay. Because what we're going to do and what you'll discover at the end of today, not necessarily just my session, but at the end of today, you should be able to walk away thinking, okay, these are the reasons why I trust this person, and these are the reasons why I want to become a trusted leader or a trusted advisor to these groups of people or for my organization. So, as we go through the session, you'll probably think, okay, the reason why I trust this person is now I understand it's because of these three or four steps here. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you some slides. So bear with me one second. So let me first of all ask you why is trust so important? Okay, because let's face it, you're here for something. You're here to either build a better relationship or you're here to find out more about trust. Um, but it's important to understand why is it so important? Why is it so important today? Okay. And because you hear a lot of companies talk about wanting to be the trusted brand, wanting to be the trusted leader in this field, wanting to be the trusted partner. And you often hear about lots of managers wanting to be trusted leaders, trusted advisors, or salespeople wanting to be the trusted go-to person. So why it's important, first of all, understand it's a little bit like a really good referee in football, where once when you have a good referee, okay, nobody notices, okay, but when you have a bad referee, people notice, things get noticed, and trust is a little bit like that. When there isn't any trust, okay, everything costs more. Okay, it costs you more in time because you have to spend more time with the person that you're trying to converse with. You're spending more time with a prospect which you're trying to get on board. Okay, you're spending more time in trying to keep a good person within your organization. So that's one of the values of why trust is so important. Secondly, I'll share with you a little bit of research, and that is Paul Zak, who did the Harvard Business Review. Some of the research which they then discovered about high trust teams is high trust teams have 74% less stress. Okay. I'm not saying they don't have any stress, but 74% less stress. I mean, imagine, I mean, I know certainly with my wife, when she was working in an environment in the latter years of her teaching career, she hated it. Okay. And she was always stressed every time she came home. She was always stressed. And when we were on holiday, before her term started, she would just get really stressed about it. So understand that, creating trust isn't simply about performance. It is also about reducing your stress levels as well. And no doubt you can all think of an environment where you didn't trust the manager, you didn't trust the organization or the department or members of your team. 106% more energy. Okay, now you might say, come on, that's like energy, really? What's the big deal with energy? Energy has this effect on everybody around you. Look, we all know people who've got high energy, and high energy people have this effect. It's infectious on other people, and it can play a part. Just like low energy people, okay, to either stay in their bubble, they don't necessarily interact with you or the team, and they stay to themselves. They can have an impact on what else is going on. So remember, energy is crucial, and trust can create more energy. Now, I hear one of you two thinking, okay, yeah, but really, personally for me, it's really about performance. And is trust going to engage in more performance? The research will show it will create 76% more engagement. So imagine if your team or your customers or your prospects are engaging with you 76% more, there's a high probability that the deal will get concluded, or the deal will move quickly, or you'll get an opportunity to see more people. And certainly in a team environment, if there's 76% more engagement, there's likely to be better quality work, okay, and more collaboration as well. So that is why trust is so important. But here's the other thing, like certainly in my management career, and I don't know about yourself or any of the others, is I've never been told how to build trust. Okay. Um, I've always been told, okay, this is what, as a leader, this is what you have to do. But nobody said, trust is the key. Like when you build trust with your team, they will willingly behave better. Okay. They willingly perform. So let me ask you a question, and maybe one or two of you have had this, which is, when was the last time you had training on how to build trust? Look, we all know it's super important. Let's face it, because if we have a lifetime partner, a wife, a girlfriend, a husband, whatever, if we have a partner, long-term partner, one of the reasons why we're with them is because we trust them. Now, if that is so important, okay, why is it that companies are not investing in helping their people or showing them, getting them on training or develop them to build trust? Okay, so that's the other thing. So these are the reasons why trust is so important. A couple of other things which we want to just share, I want to share with you is, okay, by having trust, you're inviting greater collaboration, new ideas. Okay, because when there's no trust in a relationship, the chances are the people in your team or the prospect or the client, they're going to close down. Okay. They're not going to share with you ideas or pain points or anything because there's no trust. Secondly, by having more trust, the team morale will just be better. People will get on with each other better. People will be more open with each other as well. And then of course, if you've got better collaboration and you've got better team morale, that is going to drive performance willingly. Okay. My stepson who's working in New York, he willingly works 10, 11, 12 hours, not because he has to, but because of the environment that they've created, the culture they've created in that organization. And plus, he loves what he does anyway, that helps. He will willingly work those hours because he wants to. He wants to be an important part of that organization and wants to contribute. So understand that trust also will drive performance willingly, and that's one of the key aspects. And if you've got a team that are happy in their environment, okay, that's also going to improve retention levels, which means people aren't going to leave after 6 months or a year or so or look for another environment. And that ultimately will drive culture. I mean, think about it. Imagine if you worked in an organization or a department where everybody trusted each other, everybody looked after each other, everybody would sort of step in and collaborate with you if you're having a tough time or take some of your work off you. Okay. Imagine what that would be like. I mean, that's culture. Culture isn't this this thing about branding or anything like that. Culture is how people behave in an organization. So remember that culture is key and trust plays a huge role in driving culture. The other thing is, and for me, this is probably the most important thing, which is it creates a safe environment. Okay. I mean, that's what trust is. Trust is creating a safe environment. Because when you have a safe environment, what you're going to do is this safe environment is going to allow people to open up and share ideas with you and be honest with you, whether that's something difficult for them to say or whether it's something easy. And that is what you want. Once you create a safe environment, all of those other things are likely to sort of fall in place, which we've just spoken about. And then, of course, we said reduces stress. Okay. Look, we all suffer from stress. That's just how life is here. And it's a question of if we can manage our stress and not let it get to us, okay, it's going to have an important factor as we move forward as leaders, as business development people, as managers. So now that we know why trust is so important, what I want to do is I just want to spend a few minutes on what exactly is trust, okay? Because if it's this thing that we want to get better at, it will be good to understand exactly what trust is. So, first of all, trust is reliability, okay? Do you do what you say consistently? Not every now and again, consistently, okay? So think about, just give me a second. Just for a moment, think about that person who you trust. I bet you one of those things about them is they're reliable, okay? Or they're consistent. So one of my best friends who I trust implicitly, one of the reasons I trust him is his reliability. I mean, and he will tell me exactly the truth consistently. He will never sugarcoat anything, whether it's a project I'm working on, a company I'm thinking of working with, or whether it's, people I'm engaging with. He will just tell you the truth straight away. Look, what are you doing? This is not in aligned with who you are as a person. So reliability is one thing. Consistency. Do you do what you say consistently? Secondly is care. Okay. So that person clearly cares about you, the one we're thinking about earlier on. They clearly care about you because, if there was no care in the relationship, then there'd be no trust. So ask yourself, do people who you generally feel that you have their interests at heart? You know, so people you're working with, whether that's with prospects, whether that's with customers, whether that's with your own team, you know, do they think that you generally care about them? Or are you sort of just in your little bubble, getting on with your stuff, doing your work here, whereas they're out here and you're not allowing them to come in. Okay, so care is critical about what trust is. And then, of course, honesty. Okay. And that's the ability to have the hard conversations when needed. Because trust, as we said, was to create this safe space. And when you're creating a safe space, you're going to drive honesty. And that's one of the most important things. The other thing is like trust is built in moments, okay, small moments repeatedly consistent. And what I mean by that is, your team are going to be looking at you, and somebody new comes into your team or somebody new comes into your life. Okay, you may not trust them straight away, but as time progresses, you may trust them over a period of time. But it might be built over very small things. Okay, I'll come on to that point in a second. So the other thing, what I would say and how I define trust is your ability. We go back to this safe space here. Okay. So your ability to create this safe space. And once you do that, what that will do is people will openly have a conversation with you because you've created this environment. Once you've created this environment, people are going to be open with you. Okay. Because now openness means they don't feel judged. So, for example, if I had an annual review coming up and I wanted to say some things to my boss and say, I don't like this. I think there's a better way of doing this, etc. I would feel safe doing that, not worrying about whether that's going to affect my annual review. Okay. And the same thing with yourself is once you've created this safe space and people are opening up to you, okay, that means they're going to tell you the truth. And sometimes, if we step out of the work environment, we step into a social environment, for example, I bet there's been a time when you've been at a party or a networking meeting or whatever, and somebody just wants to talk to you. Okay, now you might say, okay, that's because of the Rioja they're drinking or the gin they're drinking, whatever. Maybe, but when somebody wants to talk to you, and maybe that's just how they are, their personality, but often it's because they feel safe with you. I mean, just think about that for a second. The person who wants to continue to talk with, they just feel safe with you because they feel you've created that safe space and now they're willing to have a much more open conversation. And that's what you want to do with your team, okay? Your peers. You also want to create that environment between you and your manager who you report to. Or when you come home, that's the environment you want to create with your children or your partner. Okay. And once you've done that, once you've created this safe environment and people are willing to open up to you, they're going to tell you the truth. Now, let's face it, if you're a people leader or you're a business development manager and your job is to bring in business and you're prospecting for business or you're working with customers or you're giving a presentation, one of the things you want is you want feedback and you want the truth. Because the truth means you can then manage it and deal and move forward rather than make some assumptions about what it is. And I would rather somebody say that should be better, this was good, this is not for us, this is an area of improvement. Then you can manage it. Okay. But if you don't know what the truth is, you're sort of thinking or making assumptions of what the truth might be. And ultimately, that could be leading you down to the wrong path. So let me ask you another question. How long does it take to build trust? Okay. So now, sometimes you trust people because you have to. Okay. Like when I get on the train, I don't breathalyze the train driver and say, are you okay to drive? I trust him because I trust the company, the transport company, to do a good job in vetting their stuff. When you get on a flight to your holiday destination, we're going to France next week. I'm not going to be collaring the Ryanair pilot and say, look, are you okay to drive? Let me have a look at your credentials. No, you trust them. So there are some situations where you're just going to trust people, even though you don't know them. Okay. So in that moment, you trust people implicitly. There are those who would say, well, actually, trust takes a long time. Okay. And maybe it does. And maybe it's down to how you are as a person and your philosophy and your mindset, and also your own experience. Like if you've had some troubled times, if you've had some bad experiences, for you, maybe you're the sort of person who thinks, for me, I just, it'll take time for me to trust somebody new into our organization, somebody new into our team. But I would also say to you, when somebody new comes into your life or your company or your department, or you're meeting somebody new, start, where do you start? Are you the sort of person who says, right, I'm going to give them an opportunity? Okay. I call this the invisible trust part. And I'm going to give them the opportunity. They're always going to be neutral regardless. Okay. I'm not going to hear the background noise that might be going on about this person. So I'm going to say they're going to start with neutral. And then every little thing that happens is either going to increase my trust in them or lower it. Okay. So remember what we said, like if you say trust takes years to build, it's built in moments. Now, as leaders, as business development managers, as people who are working as part of a team, okay, trust is built in those moments, not months. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean those every little bits of interaction that you're having, whether it's an email you've sent, whether it's a conversation you've had, whether it's a presentation you're doing, okay, people are making a call. And trust can be built over a long period of time, or it can be built in an instant, but most importantly, in moments, okay, not months. So let me give you an idea. Let's call this the trust bank account. We all have bank accounts. This is the trust bank account. And what we do with every interaction, there's a deposit or a withdrawal, okay? So for example, let's take the trust bank account right now. What I'm saying how I'm coming across on this webinar, you're either thinking, okay, that makes sense, okay, which means I'm either holding the trust bar here, or if you're thinking, well, that's a load of rubbish, you know, and then it's going to slowly drop. And then if you really don't believe what I'm saying, then it's just going to drop further and further. So every little action either has a little deposit in your bank account or a withdrawal. Okay. What you want to do, what we all want to do, is to make those small deposits consistently. And then you become this trusted advisor, this trusted person that people look forward to, this person that I'm going to collaborate with you because I trust you in what you're doing, because it's based on those small moments. Okay. And then, of course, you know, those small moments can be wiped out in an instant. Okay. If you think about companies, really big companies, trusted brand companies, all of a sudden they are in the news for doing something terrible. Okay. They've lied about something, or there's been a big revelation, and then the trust in that brand has gone down. Similarly, in business and at work and for you, trust can go down. Like, you know, if you've, for example, if a manager has promised someone some commission that they're going to get paid on a specific incentive scheme, or they've offered them an opportunity to get promoted to the next level, or they're going to invite them to lead a certain project, and then they don't do it, and they come out with a fluffy excuse, the trust in that manager is going to go down. And then the next time they say, look, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to consider you for the next project, you're going to think, well, you didn't last time, and there's nothing that you've done. You haven't made any small deposits to make me think, actually, I am going to be recognized. You know, I do trust you, because if you say you're going to give me the opportunity, I'm sure you will give me the opportunity. So remember, trust bank account, every little interaction has an impact. Every conversation that you have with that person is having an effect. So now we've spoken a little bit about trust. Let me ask you a question. Are you a trusted individual? Okay, so just if you are trusted, and just use the icons on Zoom and just raise your hand. Okay, so of course you're all trusted individuals. Okay. Mm. Now, one of the things which I would say about being a trusted individual is, what are you a trusted individual for? Okay. Because a trusted individual could be someone who's trusted because they've got this incredible knowledge about health and vitality and nutrition, you know, or you could be trusted because you're a good leader, you know, you lead teams well, or you're trusted because you're a good salesperson, and because when people come to you, you treat them like true individuals, you really focus on what they want to do. So trust, how much somebody trusts you depends on potentially the subject matter. Okay. Like, I trust my best friend with money because, you know, he's been a financial advisor for 35 years plus. So I know he has my best interest at heart, so I trust him about money. But I wouldn't trust him about advice on health because he doesn't necessarily look after himself as well as he should do. So I don't trust him about that. But let me ask you a question. If you're a manager, uh, do they trust you? Does your team trust you? Okay. And a good way to sort of check this is if we were to do a quick self-audit right now, have a think about it. In the last sort of 30 days or so, have you broken a commitment, avoided a conversation, avoided picking up the phone to a specific customer or a client, or you've made some assumptions? Ask yourself that question and raise your hand if you said yes to one of these. Okay, which is broken a commitment, avoided a tough conversation, made some assumptions. Just raise your hands. Okay. Now, if you have said yes to one of these, then this is the right session for you. If you said no to all of those, this is 100% the right session for you. So let's move on. I want to share with you, now that we know what trust is, the value of trust, how important it is, how quickly you can build trust, the trust bank account, I want to share with you the three pillars of trust. And this is what I would say the foundation principles of building trust. Now, when I discovered this, it changed my life. And I know it's one of those things that people say on, seminars when they're about to sell something, etc. It changed but this really did change my life. It changed the way I interacted with my team, changed the way I interacted with customers, and it changed the way I interacted with my family at home as well. And it changed all of those relationships. So the first pillar for building trust is being present. I know what you're thinking. Being present really is that all it is? Being present. Okay, well, you may say that's all it is, but being present, let's take a look at exactly what being present is. Okay, so remember, attention is this rare, rare commodity. It's one of the most valuable things a leader can give. Like sometimes people would come to my desk and I'd be saying, yes, of course, tech. What do you want? What do you want? And I'll be continue tapping away. I can listen to you. I can listen to your conversation while I'm doing this. That is not being present. Okay. And one of the things which I used to do is to take off my glasses and then pay attention to them. It will be a way for me, it'd be like a trigger movement of how to be present with somebody. So remember, people can spot when you are not being present. 99% of the time, or 90% of the time, they're not going to tell you. They're simply not going to tell you. Okay. The first rule about being present is let's focus. Let's focus on the person you're with. Okay. It's a small thing, but let's just focus on that individual or focus on the group that you are working with. Right. So how do you do that? Well, for me, one of the hardest things to do is not to interrupt. So when someone is having a conversation with you and someone is saying something to you, just boom. That was just hard, hard for me because when I was in sales, I was brought up to listen for buying signals. And once I heard one, I just wanted to like jump in and say, oh, I know how to fix that. This is the product you need. This will help you. By the way, this will earn me this much commission. That's what I was thinking. That is not being present. Okay. So focus on the person. Do not interrupt. Now, I want to share with you three levels of listening. Okay. And as we go through them, you'll recognize them in either people in your team, people you work with, some customers and prospects, or people in your organization. The first level of listening is listening to respond. Okay. This is where most managers live. This is where most salespeople live, listening to respond. Like when I was in sales, this was me listening to respond, which was I was listening for a buying signal. And once I heard that buying signal, I would be in. I'd be like, right, and although they may continue to talk, I was no longer listening because what I wanted to do was to sound really clever and say, this is the answer to that question. I can now help you. right? Remember, level one, that's where most people are living. Level two is really listening to understand. Okay. So this is more trust-based listening. Listening to understand, that means you're talking to somebody, whether it's on a one-to-one basis or whether it's with a prospect or whether it's with your manager, talking to them and you're really trying to understand exactly what they're saying. You're focusing on them. What's the issue? What's the problem? What's the solution here? How are we going to resolve it? You really are paying attention. And that's listening level number two. If you even get to here, you're going to build trust. 100% you are going to build trust with the person, because if you focus on them and you haven't interrupted and you're listening to understand, you're going to create a real environment of safety. Level three, this is where you really move the dial, level three. And that is not just listening to understand, because now you've got good at that, but you're also listening to find out what's not being said. What's the real issue here? Okay. What, judging by their physiology, judging by their facial expression, there's something else going on. I hear the words that they're saying, but actually they're saying there's something missing here. And you can acutely feel it or see it or hear it. And that's when you have to go to the next level and then ask a more deeper question. So on that subject, so being present. So one of my first tips of the day is obviously when you're going to be present, do not interrupt. Okay. And then I want you to think about a deeper question that you can ask. Okay. Average managers, average salespeople, they hear something and then they answer it and then they go. What they don't do is ask a further deeper question. Okay. And that could be anything, but like, how are you feeling about this? Or I feel you haven't told me something yet. Is there anything else that you want to say that you haven't mentioned? Okay, it could be as simple as that. And that is just going the first level of deepness. If you can do this and you get good at this, you are going to be classed as being present. People are going to see you as a trusted person. People are going to be able to open up with you because you've created that environment. So being present for me is the foundation principle of building trust. Okay, so if being present was the first pillar, the second pillar is letting go of your agenda. What do we mean by letting go of your agenda? So let me share with you a quick story. I'll just go quickly, just stop sharing the screen for a second. Bear with me. Right, okay. So letting go of your agenda, and let me just quickly share with you. When I first got into leadership, I inherited a team, and I'd read the 1 Minute Manager. Some people might say you read the 10-second manager. And I wrote out this email and about what good looks like, making sure, being on time means being early, being on time means you're actually late, let's make sure you've had your breakfast before you start. Let's keep lunch to 1 hour. And then, if we need to stay behind, do stay behind and finish up any task and make sure by the end of the week, everything is finished. That is what good looks like, And then if you have any problems, then, first of all, before you come to me, see how you can resolve them first. And I wrote this long, which I thought was quite inspiring email. And I sort of sat back and hit the send button and boom, off it went. And I thought, wow, this is great. I feel great about this. But really what happened was when there isn't any trust in a team environment, what you'll find is the team will just shut down. And when your team shuts down, that is when you have the biggest problem. Because once they shut down, they're only going to tell you what you want to hear. And that isn't trust. They're not going to share ideas with you. They're going to talk behind your back about what a useless manager you are. That is simply because it was my agenda. I took my agenda, I ran with it, I didn't consult anybody, I didn't ask for anybody's opinion, I didn't say if people were comfortable with this. I just ran with it because it was my agenda. So here's the thing about agenda. Number one is put your agenda to one side. Just put it to one side and then come back and focus on their agenda. So what I decided I was going to do was, I realized I wasn't a very quick learner, and this went on for about 6 months. Sorry, not 6 months, went on for about 6 weeks to 8 weeks or so. And I realized there was something wrong. The team morale wasn't good. People weren't contributing at meetings. I put my hand up at the next team meeting and I said, look, guys, girls, I am so sorry. I apologize. It's my fault. I made a huge mistake here. And I shouldn't have said all the things I said. So here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is I'm going to have a one-on-one with you individually. And I know right now that's going to seem difficult for you to open up with me. And I'd like you to just share some ideas of what your one frustration is and what things we should do to make this team or the processes better. And then we're all going to come back and we're going to brainstorm everybody's ideas. And then we're going to run with your ideas, not my ideas, your ideas. Okay. The change in that was just extraordinary. Like, I couldn't believe it myself. It was like night and day. The team were opening up, the team started collaborating. The team used to then come to me with ideas and stuff like that. Wow, this is incredible. Simply because it was about letting go of my agenda. So that is crucial. So how you let go of your agenda, you put your agenda to one side and focus on theirs. And how we do that is we say, what's important to you? What is it that you want to discuss? Because when people take ownership of their agenda, they're likely to come up with ideas of how to fix it as well. And then they're more likely to take ownership as well. Okay, so that's their agenda. Let me just quickly move back to the slides. Okay, so the two pillars which we've spoken about is being present and then letting go of your agenda. And the final pillar is the impact of assumptions, the number of assumptions that you make. So let's take a look at that. Assumptions, we all know what assumptions are, okay? So we're judging or we're taking action without any real evidence. I'm assuming that, when I gave this project, it was going to be finished on time. I'm assuming that you've got everything ready for this presentation. I'm assuming that, you know what to say on this particular presentation, or you know what your role is when we go and see this customer. Those are all assumptions. And assumptions are what I would say these silent killers, okay? They're invisible, they're fast, and they're constant. So, if I assume that everybody who drives a Porsche is super successful and super happy because they drive a Porsche. Or if I assume that, if you're a CEO or you're a business leader, you're super happy or you've fulfilled your career, that's an assumption. I don't really have the evidence to back that up. Okay. So, and assumptions can often also, it's about your story. You've made this assumption about them, not the actual real person themselves. Now, the problem with assumptions is if you start off with some assumptions, the conversation can go in a different direction and you've lost the person. You've lost the trust because they're thinking, wonder why they thought that about me, or I didn't give them any reason to think that about me, or didn't share that that's where our problem was. You just assumed everybody needs your product, everybody needs your service, everybody likes you. But that's an assumption. And that's why assumptions can kill trust. Okay, remember that. So how do we manage and how do we deal with assumptions? Number one, skill number 3 is get curious. Okay, and what do we mean by get curious about assumptions? Well, first of all, name the assumption. Okay, for example, assumption I made about someone is, they are not trying hard enough. That's an assumption I made. Okay, and then I asked myself, well, what evidence have I got to back this? Is it because, they come in on time, they work fine, they hour and lunch and then they go away, it's fine. What assumption is it? Or am I comparing them with somebody else who either stays behind? And then once you've named the assumption and you've then checked to see if there's any evidence that backs it, invariably not, the question you want to ask is, help me understand. For leaders and for salespeople, this is a key phrase in your armor. Help me understand. In this case, it could be help me understand what scaled. Help me understand where the real issue is. Help me understand what you are struggling with. Help me understand what you think or how you think we should proceed. That is one of the key phrases of building trust, okay? Especially where assumptions are concerned. Okay, so we're nearly up to time, and I said I won't go over time. So very quickly, trust is this learnable skill, okay? It's behaviors. It's not about your personality. Like, whether you have an outgoing personality or whether you're someone who you feel you're an introvert or you're a bit, you suffer from anxiety, you can still build trust. Okay. If you're a leader or you're a business development manager or you're someone in the team that people look up to, like, remember, people are watching you. Every little interaction, whether it's an email, whether it's a conversation, whether it's the way you present, whether it's the way you appear, how you treat people, that is going to have an impact on those small deposits. Okay, make small deposits. And then, as you said, the three pillars of intention, sorry, the three pillars of trust, okay, requires your intention first, okay? So decide before every conversation. This afternoon, which skill, I said to you, I promise you that you're going to go away with workable skills. Which skill this afternoon are you going to use? It could be being present, okay? I would encourage you to do this, okay? Be present. When someone's speaking to you, just don't interrupt, really focus on them. Maybe ask a deeper question before responding back, okay? Or maybe you've got a one-to-one lined up this week or tomorrow, later on this afternoon. Focus on them. What do you want to talk about most today? One of the things that really changed for me as a leader and as a business manager was when we had weekly meetings, I would start off with their ideas and their pains and their issues first. What points do you want to discuss first? And that changed the whole emphasis and the energy within that meeting because I'd let go of my agenda and focused on theirs. And finally, replace your assumptions, okay? Reduce your assumptions. Think about, have I made an assumption? What is the evidence backing this? And if there's no evidence, that's an assumption. And you could always discover by using the phrase, help me understand, or I'm not clear about this, help me understand this, etc. Okay, three pillars of building trust. Okay, use them this afternoon. Okay, and feel free to come back to me. Okay, we're nearly out. We've only got 1 minute. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And whilst I wait for those, I'm going to tell you about one small thing, if you allow me to. If this is something that you're curious about, or this is something you think, yeah, this is really interesting, what's next? What do you do at all? How do you work with people? How do you work with teams? We have a program called the Trusted Leader Program. Okay. That is where we really focus on building trust and give you not just the skills that I've shared with you today, but we go deeper into those skills and how you actually implement those, how you make them work for you on a daily basis so you do generally build trust. Then we have a whole module about communication skills, which is how you communicate yourself in a group or in a one-on-one environment. And then we also have a piece about how do you create long-term habits? Because look, we've all been on courses, which we love, we like it, and then we're great for about a week. Then what happens? It tails off. We go back to our normal behavior. So how we work with customers and their teams is we adopt with them, we work with them. After the training program, we work with them for another 3 months or so to really ensure that whatever you've learned, you've actually taken on board. So I'm just going to see if there are any questions. It doesn't look like there are any questions at the moment. So I'll come off sharing. Hope you've enjoyed today's session. Thank you for your time today. If you have any questions or if you want to contact me, just go to trust-coach.com and you'll find some contact details there. I will send out the recording for you later on this afternoon. I'd love to hear about your experience this afternoon, especially like if something happens and you think somebody's conversing you differently or it's opened up for you, I'd love to hear about it. Do share it with me. Just send it to ap@trust-coach.com. I'm 2 minutes over time. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. And hopefully at some point, maybe I'll get to hear about your successes and maybe we may even work together as well. Thank you and have a good afternoon.